Hi, I'm Mark, and this is Spatial Report. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, and Happy New Year, everybody. Hope you had a great holidays, and I'm sure your 2025 is going to be amazing and awesome. Well, as you can tell, things are sounding a little bit different here on the podcast. Maggie isn't here to yell and scream at me anymore, so I'm still honestly trying to figure out things, how we're going to go into the future. So we're going to have a full podcast in a few weeks. So in the meantime, it's an honor and pleasure to welcome back an old friend to the pod, and is now the host of the much better, much more entertaining, and much more informative Geographical Thinking podcast. Here's my colleague, Michelle Brake. Michelle, welcome back to your old grounds.
Mark, thank you for having me. Happy to be here. And you say better. It's not better, it's different, Mark. We're just two sides of the same coin, doing stuff. I tell stories. You tell stories about tech. It's the same stuff.
I don't know.
It's different.
I kind of refer to this as you are in the front and first class of one of the pods, having champagne and caviar, and I'm in the middle seat in the back row in economy and coach. This is sort of how I feel.
Okay, well, let's see if we can boost that up, bring you up to first class as well, because we're top tier over here. We got top tier vibes across the playing field.
That is so true. So obviously you were formerly a part of the Spatial Report podcast. How long has it been since you've been hosting Geographical Thinking?
Yeah, so I took over hosting Geographical Thinking officially in January of 2024. I took over our hosting duties from Guan Yu, who previously hosted for many of our episodes. I want to say the first 75-ish. And Guan did a fantastic job, and I kind of carried on the torch starting at January, where we changed a few things up, changed out what was our theme music. I gave my own flavor of the podcast. And so far, I think it's been a great success. We've got a little bit of everything throughout the year. It's been good. Good year.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what's the experience been like on your end, and, the type of guests and just hosting your own podcast? How's it been for you?
I think it's been great. It's been my place to just kind of run with what I want in terms of guest interest. My personal interests are a little all over the place. Admittedly, they do fall more into the outdoor recreation, sustainability, community planning side of things. So I think some of that does come through with the guests that we've gone for. But a lot of it comes down to who wants to come on and talk to me. So it's a lot of cold emailing, figuring out, hey, you know what? I saw a cool map on social media, whether it's LinkedIn or Instagram. Let's reach out. So we've got some exciting stuff coming up this year.
Right. Yeah. I'm just going to ask about some of the guests you have lined up. But before we do that, I'm just kind of curious, because Geographical Thinking, Spatial Report, we're really quite different in terms of our content. So what makes your podcast so unique and so different?
Yeah. So I think, as we were alluding to, we're kind of two sides of the same coin here. Spatial Report, you're telling the stories about the technology that we're using, whereas Geographical Thinking is telling the stories of how that technology gets used. So the tagline that we run with is telling ideas, stories, and conversations through the lens of geography. So pretty much anything is fair game. No industry is off limits. We want to talk to everybody. We want to showcase every story. As long as people want to tell it, we're here for it. So I think that is kind of where we separate, where how do you use the technology, whereas Spatial Report is what is the tech? How are the things that you can go out and do with it relevant for the industry?
Right. And you've had a number of great guests over 2024, and I'm sure you have a few lined up for the new year. So any sneak peeks on some of the guests you have lined up?
Okay, so kicking us off in the new year here is going to be a tourism-based episode with Destination Canada, with a really cool experience builder app that I found just through some perusing on the internet. I was like, you know what? This is, I think, one of the better apps I've seen in a while. And it really sparked my interest. Another one that I'm excited about is a archaeology lab group out of St. Mary's University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And they're looking at bringing in historical maps and laying that alongside current streetscapes today and mapping using some 3D technology to see how have streets and buildings changed over time and understanding what do we still have, what's been preserved, Pretty cool project. And I'll give you a sneak peek for our final thing to round out the next few episodes is we're going to have some winter trivia with the famous Mike Rogatsky going up against the formidable Raul Chandra in some wintry holiday type trivia. So holidays, winter traditions across the entire season. So not just limited to like a New Year's or a Kwanzaa or Diwali. We got it all there. So those are our first three for the year. We'll definitely want to keep an eye on those.
Love it. Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Destination Canada too. So I'm really looking forward to listening to that pod. Mm-hmm. So in case our listeners haven't listened to the Geographical Thinking podcast, we're going to play an episode for you right now. So Michelle, tell us what we're going to hear.
Yeah. So this episode was kind of my brainchild throughout the year of what can we do to wrap up my first year of hosting. And I wanted to start a new tradition of sorts, as we like to do in our new family spaces. I like to think of Geographical Thinking. We're just one large GIS family. So our tradition that we're starting and what you're going to be hearing is 2024 in review. So it's our key geospatial moments from the year that we thought were really fun and interesting. So a mixture of technology, of people, and some key industry highlights that we've seen. So we're going to hear from 5 different Esri Canada staff, along with my own geospatial moment for what made our 2024 memorable. Now, but I want to hear, before we get started, Mark, what was your 2024 moment in GIS?
Oh boy, gosh, you're putting me on the spot here.
I know, it's background.
I really love sort of the advancements that we made in ArcGIS Pro. So just some of the new features that have been added in. And these are not necessarily huge features, but these are things that will help you with your usability, the little things that makes life a little bit better. So I'm glad that they're paying a lot of attention in improving the usability of ArcGIS Pro. Does that count?
I think so. I think quality of life changes within the technology are such a big part of what we need. They're never going to be the wow moment that you see. It's a flashy demo, but small changes like the recycle bin.
Exactly.
That's a really cool change. I know there's been several of different Python changes of where things save or how things save. That gets a standing ovation from people. The little things matter. So I think small changes in Pro that help us with that quality of life are always going to be a plus in my book.
Well, I have my bag of popcorn. I got my Diet Coke. I am ready to listen to the podcast. So, Michelle, we really appreciate you giving us a few minutes of your time, and thanks for sharing this podcast with us.
Yeah, and thanks for spotlighting it. Look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts.
Absolutely. So that's Michelle Brake. She is the Senior Technical Solutions Specialist for Enterprise and the host of the Geographical Thinking podcast, and she's joining us from Wolfville, Nova Scotia. All right, so just to wrap things up, don't forget we have our website, esri.ca/spatial report if you want some more details. We've got a bunch of content on our Esri Canada YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe to the Getting Technical newsletter with all the tech news that you need. So I'm going to be back in a few weeks with the triumphant return of Spatial Report. Until then, happy mapping. And now, here's Michelle's Geographical Thinking podcast.
As the year comes to a close, we're taking a moment to reflect on 2024, a year filled with innovation, breakthroughs, and unforgettable moments in the world of GIS. In this episode, I've asked some of my colleagues at Esri Canada to share their most memorable GIS moments of the year. From game-changing technology to community growth, you'll hear stories that highlight how GIS continues to make an impact. Join us as we look back at these standout moments, explore why they resonated, and celebrate the power of geography to transform our lives and communities. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Geographical Thinking. I'm Michelle Brake, and I'll be your guide as we explore ideas, stories, and conversations through the lens of geography. Joining me today are 5 awesome colleagues from across Esri Canada, ready to spill the tea on their 2024 GIS highlights. They'll share a glimpse into what they do here, the standout GIS moment that rocked their world this year, and why it's such a big deal for the entire GIS community. To get us started, we have Dominic Walter, an ArcGIS support consultant on our support services team. Welcome to Geographical Thinking, Dominic.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your role as an ArcGIS support consultant? What does the average week look like for you?
Yeah, of course. So I'm an ArcGIS support consultant, as Michelle mentioned previously, on the ArcGIS Online team specifically. So generally, we assist clients in using the software, whether it be troubleshooting issues they're having, or just generally working through a particular workflow to get one step of it, or how to complete a particular process in their work, their little section of their workflow. And it consists of primarily, our week is troubleshooting, research, and communication with either Esri Inc. or the client.
Okay, so pretty important stuff is what I'm hearing is when something, if I need some help with ArcGIS Online, you're the person we turn to. And I
Correct.
know that's always such an important thing for me. I appreciate when you take my phone calls, and I can imagine everyone else is also happy for that as well. I'm wondering, what was the big moment that stood out for you in GIS this year?
Definitely for me, the thing that stood out was just I felt there was a lot of improvements and strides in ArcGIS Online this year. We got new things such as the recycle bin to like the web editor, the multitude of workflow shortcuts. We had model builder introduced, and then the development team was clearly working overtime this year, I think. And we had some really big additions as well as just general quality of life changes.
Okay. Now, if you had to pick one of those many things as kind of the standout top mascot for the year, what would it be?
Recycle bin easily.
That's fair. I mean, being able to remove content and then restore it on your own within 14 days, pretty game changer in my opinion.
Definitely.
And now for you on your side of things, being in support, why did this topic resonate with you so much?
As my role, we speak with clients regularly. We're kind of on that like front lines, as we call it. Um, and we hear the requests and the woes of what they want to see in ArcGIS Online. And that one really stood out to me as something people were constantly, requesting. And even internally, for instance, here at Esri Canada, definitely one of those things.
Okay. And that makes sense. I know frequently there's those times of, oh, I accidentally deleted something, call support, can you help me? So I think
Exactly.
having that 14-day grace period is going to be a game changer. Maybe even on some of the call logs that you're taking, maybe we'll shorten down the queue a bit.
It's definitely, I have some bias a little bit to that one for sure.
That's fair. And with that, Dominic, that wraps us up. Thank you so much for joining us. Any parting words for our audience before you sign off?
Yeah, for sure. The only thing I'd like to say is, any end users or clients or whoever is calling us or using the software, um, keep trying to push the boundaries of ArcGIS Online. As you're learning, we're learning as well because we have to troubleshoot these issues and, do testing. So that's all from me, and Merry Christmas. That's all.
Awesome. Thank you, Dominic. And that was a great technical point, I think, to start us off on. Next, we're going to be going over to Allison O'Brien, a technical solution specialist on the technical marketing team. Allison, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I am happy to be speaking with you today.
Awesome. And I know we work closely already now that you've joined the technical marketing team a few months ago. But for those that are unaware, what does your role in technical marketing look like as a technical solution specialist? What's the average week like?
Yeah, so in this role, I'm responsible for creating demos for our clients, presenting webinars, and creating like technical content to showcase what the software can do, whether that's in ArcGIS Pro or ArcGIS Online. So, depending on what deadline I have coming up, a normal work week would be me just coming up with the content for that specific project.
Okay, so a little bit of everything, kind of feeling it out, see what's out there, what needs to be shared with the community.
Exactly.
Okay, and knowing that sharing is a big part of our job collectively, what was the moment that stood out for you in GIS this year?
Okay, so I'm super excited to talk about this. So I was very impressed with seeing the release of Dr. Dawn Wright's book. She's the chief scientist at Esri. And so the book is called Mapping the Deep: Innovation, exploration and the dive of a lifetime. So it's a book about her historic 2022 trip that made her the first Black person to visit Challenger Deep in the Marianas Trench. So that's the deepest and most unexplored place on Earth. It's over 10,000, I think, 10,000 meters beneath the Pacific Ocean surface. And so the book highlights the importance of mapping the ocean and its impact on the planet's future. So I haven't read the book just yet, but it's on my Christmas list. So I'm hoping to read it very soon.
Okay, great choice. And I know I've been following Dr. Dawn Wright's progress with her projects and her trip as it happened over the past few years on social media. And she always has so much great information to share. I know I haven't had a chance to read the book yet either, so I'm looking forward to it. Maybe even hearing your notes first will give me an idea of where to go first in the book. But I am wondering, why did this particular topic resonate with you?
Great question. So, I think it's really important to highlight the amazing work that women scientists are doing. So, this is a field that's dominated by men, but there are so many talented and intelligent women scientists that are doing such important research for our planet, and they should be highlighted and celebrated. So, there's something that I read about Dr. Dawn Wright, and so she explained in many of her fieldwork adventures she was one of a small group of women compared to men on those trips. So upon working with the large groups of men, she stated like it doesn't matter what your background is, we're people and scientists first. And she also explained that we need more women to be educated across the world, including in GIS, because we can't afford to miss out on those like perspectives of women's, the sensitivity and the experiences of like half our population, right? I think that's so, so important. So she's had so many amazing adventures. I highly recommend everyone to check out the work that she's done and that she's still doing. She's a really, really cool woman.
Yeah, and I think that's a great call out as well. I'm going to throw it back to a past episode we did this year. Back in November, we released an episode where we talked with Dr. Julia Vagaman from the Women Plus in Geospatial group. And I think that's a great connection here as well as, hey, we're looking at growing experiences of people within GIS and finding those spaces and communities where we can. So definitely check out that episode as well as their larger group in general, I think is a great point here. But with that, that wraps us up with Allison. Thank you for joining me today. Any last words of wisdom for our audience?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Michelle. So, my words of wisdom of the day are take time to thank the powerful women in your lives.
I love it. And with that, we'll see Allison probably at some point next year in 2025. Up next, we have Jessica McCann, a senior support enablement consultant from the support enablement team. Welcome to Geographical Thinking, Jessica. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Michelle, on your podcast.
Yeah,
I'm
and
happy to be here.
Amazing. We're happy to have you. It's always nice to bring in other voices from across the company. I was going to say faces, but we don't have the face portion here. I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about your role as a senior support enablement consultant. What does the average week look like for you?
Actually, I spent all of my career in support services. So I grew along the evolving technology for many years. My role here is embedded in support services. Many of my responsibility lies with training, coaching, and analyst readiness. I also support the Esri Canada Associate GIS Professional Program in their first 18 months in the company. Occasionally, I get to contribute to proactive content such as blogs or post on the Esri community.
Okay, so a little bit of everything, which is nice. But the main reason why we're here, I want to know what was the moment that stood out to you in GIS this year?
Actually, this year I'd have to choose the AI chat box. A year ago, the AI chat box was integrated in the Esri support apps. Subsequently, 6 months later, it was on our support website, enabling customer for a self-serve support tool at their fingertips whenever they needed it.
Okay.
Please know that our wonderful teams of support analysts are still doing a fantastic job in assisting our customers. But we rather provide our customers with a self-serve options that may answer the questions without the need of contacting us. So this initial release in 2023 was just a question and answer model, but it has since moved to a conversational AI that has a memory of your previous queries, and you can ask follow-up questions. Interestingly, it's available in 40 language,
Wow.
English and French included, right? For our Canadian customers. So, meaning the questions will give pretty much an answer in the language you asked.
Okay.
So, moreover, the AI is trained exclusively on Esri content, including data from the technical support site, product documentation, or ArcGIS blog, and more. What the chatbot does not reference is the Esri community content, the
Mhm.
events, or art news.
Okay.
Non-Esri content from third-party sources are not included either. So the chatbot has everything indexes from 2017 onwards.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. That still covers a lot of stuff and provides that great back and forth of, hey, I need some information from technical support documentation. Means I don't have to go through everything myself. Um, Anything else you want to talk about on the chatbot side of things?
Well, it's important when you converse with the AI that it's remember that it's not a human. It's a question and answers and converse. You can converse with it. But when applicable, when you use the AI, try using product names and version in your question to make more relevant results. If
Mhm.
you're asking about a tool available in both Narc Map and Pro, for example, specify which one you're using. You might get more details about it. If you have workflows or errors you want to inquire about, please feel free to use them. As with Mode AI, you may not get relevant answers, but you need maybe perhaps to refine your question a few
Mhm.
times before to get the most relevant possible response. Ask them follow up questions. It can
Okay.
sure be used for your initial troubleshooting. It
Yeah.
indexes all technical article from the Esri supports site. But as with any chat box, use it wisely. The support chat box is meant to a tool to assist you in getting to your answers faster. Ultimately, the decision makings are left to the human who drives the decision. Vet and test before implementing them. If you're unsure, contact us. The sports services team will be happy to help. A good practice is read them like you read a recipe that you're about to cook, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then, if you need to, test them first. It may take a few tries and it may suggest something you haven't thought of. So, discuss those items with stakeholders like your IT department, right? Some workflows have a great impact on your organization. It's a good tool for quick information gathering, troubleshooting error. But for productation design and implementation or large structural changes, that are quite unique to one's environment, we recommend contacting us in those situations. I know, Michelle, you're familiar with ArcGIS Enterprise, and it can have many intricacies. Please reach out to support for troubleshooting problems with complex deployment,
I think
right?
that's a great point, especially on the enterprise side of things, because so many things are going to be specific to people's own environment and a setting that having one chatbot that can go through everything at once without you knowing how to direct it could be a little bit problemsome. I'm
Exactly.
wondering, yeah, anything
So
else?
it's built with their trust our trust in mind, right? We want a customer to trust a chatbot. So the chat box is trained on Esri content. So your chances to have a irrelevant or incorrect answer are slimmer or less likely. But fortunately, we know that it is a trained AI, and we have in order to improve it, there is a built-in feedback capabilities, and we encourage the customers to use it to refine answers that might have not seemed quite right. So we are welcoming feedback from customers and have
Mhm.
built it in the AI for them to contribute as well. If I may take a few minutes here, I would like to show some example of what you can ask the
Yeah.
AI. So if I go and ask the AI, how can I plan a route between two locations? The answer provided with me with general stuff with the ArcGIS online map viewer. But I'm also informed that there's also the capabilities of doing it in Pro to perform the task. Knowing that I want to use my own data set, I can rephrase my question, right? And ask how to plan a route in ArcGIS Pro. So right away, I'm proposed to enable the network analyst extension and then add my network data set to the map. See how little tweaks of mentioning a product could make a different answer?
Yeah.
So it's safe to say that the more specific detail you provide, the more on point your answer is likely to be, right? So let's try another common one that you may relate to this one, Michelle. It's how to fix an error. You might not know the number, but it's 00230 has a different projection than,
Oh, of course.
right? I think it's safe to say that anyone encountered this error before at some point in their life. Sometimes not intentionally, right? It's just because we've used a layer that's coming from a different data source than our other layers. And this error normally occurs that it has a different projection. So the AI will say to me and proposing me the steps to resolve the issue. Proposing me with two options: either I project the service layer or I change the projection of my maps, in which I have a choice and I pick the respective steps to proceed further. So let's say I went even further. I'm trying to test it how broad I could be.
Okay.
So I went even further and asked a question: how to perform a watershed analysis, right? Could be
Yeah.
quite lengthy between me and you, Michelle.
Yeah, we had
Right?
several steps. We got a lot to process with data and think about what are some of the common maybe parameters we might want. A little bit of different stuff going on.
Exactly. It provided me with an 8-step procedure.
Wow.
So I said, okay, I might not be familiar. How about I want to know about training? So I then asked, is there any training courses on watershed analysis? Bam! Results showed me 4 results related to training courses or a session offered by Esri. And if I wanted to learn more, I was encouraged to visit the Esri training website.
Okay. So it seems like it's got enough knowledge to know when to send you in other directions based on what you're asking and provide you a few different options, which I think is nice. It's not one size fits all, one answer, because that's not how GIS works. But acknowledging that's a lot of information for us to think about on the AI side, as well as looking at technical support. I want to say thank you so much for sharing that, first of all. And are there any final takeaways you'd like to leave us with?
There is actually. There's some word of caution I would like to leave with when using the AI, is that sometimes it will recommend you a workflow that it uses credits, right? How
Yeah.
many often that we're surprised with a tool or functionality that may consume credits. So what I would recommend customers is to familiarize themselves with the understanding credit documentation and employ best practices when it comes to credit management. Various blogs are covered, right? You know, Michelle, you probably read a few yourself.
One or two.
One or two, right? So, staying on top of your credit consumption. For example, when performing analysis, I always recommend to look for that little link. What is the estimated credit that this is going to cost me if I perform this task, right? Or this operation. And lastly, I would say is if a question is being asked, is why doesn't the Esri support AI chat box about the product wasn't uh, something that came out and was announced today or this morning, is not included, is that we update our training data frequently, however not in real time, and there will be a slight delay in the publication of the new information in the chat box and learning about it. And the reason why is that we want to curate new content, right, to ensure it provides relevant answers.
Right? Because we're not going to have everything ready to go all the time for AI. It's not constantly refreshing every 30 minutes. It needs time to rebuild, rethink. It needs some rest like we do. So all of that makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot to think about, maybe tinker and play with over the next few months before we look for, okay, where else are AI chatbots going to pop up? How can I use AI in my work? So thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing that with us today.
No problem. Thank you again for having me again. It's a pleasure, Michelle.
Our next guest is Milena McCrossan-Moses, Living Atlas Curator for the Geospatial Infrastructure team. Milena, thank you so much for joining me today on Geographical Thinking.
Thanks for having me, Michelle. Excited to be here.
Yeah, and can you tell us a little bit about your role as the Living Atlas Coordinator and what does the average week look like for you?
Yeah, so as the Living Atlas curator for Esri Canada, I manage all of the Canadian content you see within the Living Atlas. So for those that might not be too familiar with the Living Atlas, it is a tool that is built right into the ArcGIS platform, and it is a collection of geographic information from around the world. So the Living Atlas is an ever-evolving repository of maps, apps, and data layers curated from the global GIS community. So as the curator for Canadian content, I really ensure that the data that we have in the Living Atlas is authoritative and up to date. My average week is actually has a lot of variability, which I do love. For example, I manage the different live feature services that Esri Canada has published to the Living Atlas. These show real-time data topics on topics, such as road conditions, weather alerts, and active wildfires. And a large portion of my week is always being on the lookout for new data and content that would be great additions to the Living Atlas. So working with our customers to help them nominate their data or amazing applications is always a highlight for me.
Okay, and what was the moment that stood out to you this year in GIS?
Yeah, so I think one of the moments that really stood out to me this year was actually working with one of our amazing customers, the Government Operations Center, or GOC for short, to get their emergency management web mapping applications added to the Living Atlas. So the GOC works within Public Safety Canada to support preparedness and lead coordination of the integrated federal responses for all hazard events of national interest. They have created some amazing web applications that are designed to provide management, planners, and analysts access to authoritative geographic data that would normally only be accessible to those working within the GIS industry. Each web application touches on different topics. For example, they have a wildland fires application, and this shows wildfire hotspots, fire perimeters, smoke plume modeling, and other layers of interest, such as infrastructure and transportation and weather conditions. They also have a historic imagery application, which actually shares imagery from the National Aerial Surveillance Program. And their most recent application looks at earthquakes within Canada. So this includes the most recent earthquake activity, historical earthquake data, along with some different hazard models as well.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff that falls into one umbrella of work for the government.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, aside from all the very obvious reasons of why this kind of data matters, why did this topic in particular resonate with you?
Yeah, so this moment really resonated with me because working with the GOC and their contribution to the Living Atlas, I thought really showcased the benefits and opportunities that the Living Atlas can provide. So the web applications that the GOC have created are using a variety of different data sources, including data that is available within the Living Atlas, publicly available data, and as data that they themselves have published and created. So the Living Atlas is really about building community by connecting individuals and organizations with the spatial content that they need in their everyday workflows. And the GOC has really leveraged the Living Atlas in their work, and in turn are also giving back to the GIS community by contributing their content back to the Living Atlas. And this has led to different types of collaborations and given inspiration to others on how they can to leverage content available to them through the Living Atlas.
Very cool. Thank you again so much for being here, Milena, and sharing that insight with us into some of the key players of Living Atlas data. But before we leave, and do you have any closing words for our listeners?
Yeah, I think I would just like to encourage everyone to always take a look at what's available in the Living Atlas. There's such a wide variety of content and it's always evolving. And I'd love you to take advantage of using that great content that's available to you. And I want to really encourage everyone to consider nominating their content as well. There are so many organizations out there that are producing amazing content and sharing their work, whether it's through ArcGIS Online or hub sites, which is amazing. But it can be difficult for people to find your content when they're kind of filtering through the millions of different items on ArcGIS Online. So I really encourage everyone to nominate the content to the Living Atlas to help make it easier for the GIS community as a whole to find your great work.
Wrapping up our guest today is Kelsey Davis, the Program Manager for Indigenous Communities as part of the President's Office team. Welcome to Geographical Thinking, Kelsey. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks very much for having me. Really excited to be here today, Michelle.
Yeah, and it's great to have you back because I know you did one of the Management Perspective episodes earlier this year. So a nice full circle moment.
Absolutely.
Now, working in the President's Office as the Program Manager for Indigenous Communities, can you tell us a bit more about your role and what does the average week look like for you?
Oh boy, that's sure a loaded question, but happy to give a little bit of an overview. So as you know, Michelle, the program was created only about 6 months ago at Esri Canada. So it's a very big step for Esri Canada, although we've had Indigenous customers, hundreds, if not thousands, for many decades. It's really a step towards putting resources in place to focus on that particular part of our customer base. And with that, I get exposed to a tremendous amount across the country on a given day. Working with our industry verticals, there's a lot of crossover. And from coast to coast, of course, a tremendous amount going on. So trying to keep on top of it certainly keeps me busy and keeps me on my toes. So I could be on a call in the morning talking about asset management or housing crisis in First Nations communities. And then that afternoon, of course, talking about something entirely different: forest fires, climate change, traditional knowledge, and looking at the world through in the Indigenous lens and blending that culture with GIS and land stewardship and all those things. So it's one of the things I really enjoy about the role is there's no end of variety to things that I get to be exposed to, and of course working with the people. When I get to work directly with people from the communities, it's just such an enriching experience and really enjoyable time. So I don't know, in a nutshell, my day is pretty crazy most days, pulled in a lot of directions. I am an army of one right now, and we are developing the program with the intent of building a team, of course, but little steps, and we're just starting out. So for the short term anyways, it'll just be me predominantly and others that I can collaborate with to really drive initiatives forward. So
yeah, and we definitely look forward to hearing what that progress looks like, and hopefully featuring some more Indigenous voices within the podcast realm and throughout what we're doing here at Esri Canada on the marketing side of things. But I suspect I know what this might answer going forward. But what was the moment that stood out to you in GIS this year? Is it by chance related to your job?
Indeed, yeah. If there was one thing that stood out for me this year, it was having the chance to attend the UC in San Diego. I've been in this field for almost 30 years now, and this is the first time I've ever been to the Esri UC, so I was really excited to get the chance to attend. But I think more importantly, the thing that really stands out for me and that event is the Native Nations Summit. So one of the days during the week is a dedicated day focused on Indigenous GIS. In the US, they use the term tribal, but tribal GIS. And it's really a dedicated, separate stream, an entire focused day separate from the main conference where everybody that works in Indigenous context with GIS come together and have a series of focused talks. And so it was very, very enlightening to be a part of that, not only getting to go to the UC for the first time, but then being able to participate in that Native Nation Summit. And of course, we're keying up a number of our customers, to your comments earlier, to be a part of that next year, tell their story down in San Diego, work with our marketing team here, of course, in Canada to get those stories out. There's some amazing stories that are going on across this country. Every day I uncover some new things that I'm looking at and thinking, people need to know about all these wonderful things that our First Nations communities and Métis and Inuit people are doing with GIS. It's really quite astounding, and that unique perspective of blending Indigenous ways of knowing and seeing with the concepts of GIS. Of course, they're both founded around what's happening on the land, which provides a very unique connection already. But just really elevating those stories and bringing more of that awareness forward is something that's really exciting. And of course, that event really sparked and inflamed a lot of excitement for me as a real highlight throughout the year, for sure. That stood out.
Yeah, and I can see why that particular topic definitely resonates. Having more of a platform and being able to go out and hear what's already being done, I can imagine it's pretty inspiring for how can we start elevating more voices here within Canada.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a big part of my role, is really making connections both within Esri Canada. So connecting people from different parts of the organization that are focusing on maybe different verticals that we touch, and really shedding light on where the Indigenous context fits with what other people are doing. Just raising awareness from one end of the country to the other of what's happening in one place versus another is a big part of my day, is really making connections. And I really enjoy that kind of work, working with people, and I have a background in business development, so I really enjoy that aspect of the day-to-day.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a lot to look out for next year. But I want to say thank you again, Kelsey, for joining us to share about your key moment in GIS this year. Any final thoughts you want to leave the audience with?
I think just expect more and keep an eye out for those stories. We're building up to have a very big year in 2025 and beyond. We have a real solid strategic plan in place, and we'll be moving forward with some really, really exciting things, working with our customers and really just telling some amazing, awesome stories from across the country. So yeah, keep an eye out for those, and look forward to more great things to come.
Awesome.